So here we are, 7 days later. We're going to go ahead and keg the experiment. If you remember the experiment, our goal is to make a beer in 7 days and test the two different kinds of methods that we're going to test in the course. If you can ferment in a carboy versus fermenting in a keg and recapturing the CO2 via spunding valve. So, got about an hour and a half before the panel comes over. And in preparation for this, I went ahead and sanitized everything. I got the keg sanitized. I shot some sanitizer through it. I got a bucket here with the tools needed. Got a couple extra bottles in case I end up with some extra beer. Don't want to waste that. If you're going to recycle your yeast slurry, now is a good time to take some Tupperware and sanitize it. If you can, try to use some new stuff so it doesn't have any scratches in it and jeopardize the quality of your yeast. So let's go ahead and we'll open this up. And if you remember, it's a simple pale ale. And first we need to take our hydrometer reading. And we're at a flush 10.1010. It's important to depressurize the keg. That allows you to take the lid off. So using our 3/8 stainless steel racking cane with clip, we can anchor this here. As well as our .3/8 high temperature silicone hose. Great thing about the stainless steel here is that you can kind of see where it meets the outside of the carboy, so you can kind of keep your transfers clean. I've also devised a different technique where I use a stainless steel T-ball strainer that I clip around the hose here, and that keeps a lot of debris out too. But since we're using Nottingham yeast and the fermentation is very vigorous, I don't see any reason to use it. Not getting a lot of particulate in this one, and it was a low hopped beer, so. Let's go ahead and pause and we'll rejoin when we fill this keg. So we just finished up our transfer here, and our primary occupation is getting this set, getting the O2 purged. We do have some extra beer in there, which we'll worry about later. Put your lid on, and you should set your CO2 regulator to 30. Remember, we're going to set the lid. This exerts outward pressure. And also at the same time, when we purge it 3 times, CO2 is heavier than oxygen, and the oxygen will leave the container. 2, and 3. So now we've got a sealed container with chilled beer, and we need to force carb it now. So we're going to drop to the floor, and we're going to do that for 7 minutes, rolling it on its side gently at 30 psi, and it'll be drinkable in about an hour and a half when the panel comes over for the test. Okay, so we've just finished the transfer of the first 19 liters or 5 gallons of this into the keg for the experiment. That's going to happen a little bit later, but we find ourselves in an awesome situation where we have extra beer. So this is kind of like playing with house money. At this point, I don't want to pour it out That's wasteful. At the same time, I don't want to get out bottles and the capper and do that because I'm lazy. So I'm kind of left in the bind, don't want to waste it. So what am I going to do? Good old plastic bottle, PET bottle. In Korea here, they serve these in PET bottle, not so much in the US, but these are a viable option. They're good for carbonation, they're dark, and they have the PET thread on top. And I'll talk about a couple different options in which you can use these to kind of get away with some free beer. So first we need to transfer the beer into the bottle. First we need to transfer the beer from the fermenter into the bottles. And this can be a little bit tricky because we're dealing with the last liter or two of beer. So getting a sediment-free transfer is kind of difficult. On the other end of the coin, this is free beer, so it doesn't really matter. So just do your best. In these single 2-liter bottles, we have to carbonate it somehow. Most people are pretty familiar with doing the batch prime method. That's where you take a certain weight of sugar, corn sugar, honey, cane sugar, you boil it to sanitize it, then you add it to your bottling bucket with your wort, give it a quick little swirl, gentle swirl, and then you put these in bottles and then you wait 3 weeks for it to carbonate up. And that's great if you're doing 50 bottles, 100 bottles, but we've got the 1 bottle, 2 bottles, and we don't want to deal with all that. So what you can do is go to a priming sugar calculator. Homebrewing.com has a really good one, and the denominations I'm dealing with are 1 liter, so that's pretty handy. I'm kind of looking for a pale ale carbonation level, and I typically like mine at the low 2 volumes. So when I put in that information, the ambient temperature in here, about 65F, 17C, and the fact that I like a 2.1 volume beer, they told me that I needed 4.2 grams of cane sugar. Well, it just so happens that this little spoon here, the 5 milliliter spoon per volume, is 4.2 grams of sugar. So instead of going to the hassle of batch priming and boiling, it's just 1 beer. So I'm going to roll the dice here, get my level teaspoon, and add it in there. Again, it's 1 beer, who cares? So I put the cap on, and the funnel would make this job a little bit cleaner, but and at room temperature, this will be ready to go in 3 weeks. But not everyone wants to wait 3 weeks and is impatient. In comes the carbonator cap. Carbonator cap, like I said, has PET thread size, and on the other side has a ball lock gas connector. What you do is you add it to your uncarbed beer, and you hook up your CO2 source. Just like we did with the keg. You can give it a flush, get the oxygen out. And maybe 3 times an overkill. There isn't a lot of headspace here, but you give it a shake. Just like we did with the forced carbing and the keg. There's a little bit of kind of a special touch here. Kind of have to figure out, like your shaking method, maybe it'll be 30 seconds and you'll have beer. Just the same though, if you undercarb it and you have a little bit and you try it and it's undercarbed, hook it back up to here and try it again. This carbonator cap is very versatile in the fact that, say after 3 weeks you have this and maybe you just want to have half of it for the night, well then you got a bunch of headspace here and this beer is going to lose its carbonation. You can put this on top of this and kind of recharge it, purge the O2, and then you can have it at any time. You don't have to drink it immediately.